feeling a bit like Alice? Tumbling down the rabbit hole?
Curiosity often leads to trouble.
You take the blue pill. The story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to. You take the red pill. You stay in Wonderland. And I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
I'm awake. Are you? Let's go now to our new episode of The Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Love.
Hi, welcome to Kadosh Life and Unfiltered Rise. I'm here with Heidi Love again, and we are going to continue our chat from last time about the Nephilim, the AntiChrist church, the symbolism in the temples, what's going on in the world of the abuse situations with, what's going on in the public. We're just going to cover a whole bunch of stuff today, and we're going to do 2 parts again. So this will probably be
at the rate,
3.
At the rate 4. This is going, we're going to be doing them every week for years.
Yeah, right. but we won't continue parts,
No.
but we'll just continue this topic. So
yeah, yep. I'm just saying because there's such a wealth of information from the lovely Church of Latter-day Saints.
Oh, the church left us with eons worth of things to unravel. Absolutely.
So it's so much. Yes, we're trying.
So what we're going to jump into today is we wanted to just hit on a few things after going back through, we're women and we both have a little bit of ADD.
We do.
And we do these tangent things. And so there's a few things that we didn't complete. So we're going to kind of touch on some of that stuff from the last episode, and then we're going to go into just expounding on some of the stuff we already talked about. So, one of the first things that I wanted to point out is that I had said at one point that Lucifer in the temple is the one who gives signs and tokens. And I didn't mean to say Lucifer. He's not the one in the video that actually is teaching signs and tokens. That's Peter, James, and John. But he asks them if they have any money. It's this really weird thing.
He also gives us the apron. He straight up gives us the apron. So that
right. Right. And I found the video. And so maybe,
oh my gosh,
we can go into that and it's really weird too. Cause now while I was searching for the Mormon temple, Adam and Eve creation video that has taken Genesis and added a bunch of weird stuff into it that's not there. There's somebody who went in recently and recorded it and put the whole thing up, but then they made him take it down because of copyright. But
that was my friend. He was going to get sued. That was my friend.
Oh, you know him?
I do.
That is crazy. We should maybe talk to him.
Oh, he would do it. Maybe.
They came on another video and they had their voices. It was a couple and they had their voices like muted out and they weren't on camera. Probably because they didn't want to get sued or in trouble by the church for doing it. But they, right now, it's crazy because they don't have the movie anymore. And I didn't know this. They're doing the slideshow. So it's totally different than it was, which is really weird because they spent a lot of money and several years making 4 new videos. And so the newest one that's actually a full-length video, one of the newer ones, that was before they moved it to a slideshow now. I've never even seen that one, and I had seen them all before. And so I'm not sure what's going on there. But they change stuff all the time, and it just goes to show how much is being changed there. So I just wanted to say a correction in case anybody caught on to that. Lucifer doesn't hand out the signs and tokens, but like you said, he does give the apron. So I think at some point we definitely should go into a commentary on the Mormon Temple movie and just sit and watch it and break it down because
it's so
it's
crazy.
fascinating.
We might.
Yeah, if you knew what we watched in there.
You're just sitting there going, what are we doing?
A lot of people never go back. A lot of people never go back after the first time. Once they get in there, they're like, hello.
Yep.
So
I felt that way.
Okay. And then I wanted to hit on too. So I talked about how there was one of my daughter's dreams that pointed me to understanding that the Nephi thing connection to the Nephilim. And it's fascinating because I was looking at her dream, and it's definitely a prophetic dream. And what I feel like it is about is the wicked destroying the wicked, because the dead Nephilim spirits and the giants in the Bible are what's prophesied in the last days to come and destroy. And it says in the Bible that they would have to watch their children destroy one another. God cursed them that they would have to watch their children destroy one another. And even in the spirit, these dead evil spirits of the Nephilim, are coming back to destroy with the giants that are currently here. I've seen that in vision myself, giants coming up from underneath the ground. And we know we've heard people in the government programs who definitely have access to underground tunnels, and people in SRA rituals who have been in rituals have seen giants in the underground or in their rituals. And they also say, you can't say the name of Jesus around them. And I think some of them may be interdimensional, because they're children of the fallen angels. And so they can't say the name of Jesus, or they probably cease to stay in the realm. So there's all these interesting things about that. But what my daughter's dream was about, and I'm just going to read through it real quick. It's pretty short, but it's fascinating because it's actually about the wicked destroying the wicked and within the church. And Nephi, I feel like, symbolizes the Nephilim children of the Mormon church. And the inner fight between and amongst the seed of the serpent, essentially. And those are the ones that God is going to send to do the destruction work. And so she says Nephi went to the church. And so when you hear Nephi, think of, the Nephilim, or the children of the Nephilim, or the children of the fallen, or even the dead, disembodied evil spirits of the Nephilim, because they'll all be involved in this end times, Revelations battle. Saw a huge zombie, but he was brave. But he killed it because he knew he was brave, which is, they're called the mighty men of renown. They're definitely, she's just pointing to, I knew nothing about the Nephilim then. And, this was years ago that she had this dream. And so she was getting just little pieces of the puzzle when she was like maybe 5. Oh. He used a lasso to kill the zombie and bring it down. The zombie landed on the church. And now when she's talking about zombies, I would say, this is like the dead walking humans who are just dead asleep, and bounced back and forth on the church. It knocked the church down. Okay, this is a prophecy that I've been feeling myself too before I even read this and realized what she was saying, that the church is going to be taken down by their own. And we'll go into some other stuff about a recent death that just happened with that. The zombie got back up and whistled and called for more zombies, and 15 more came. Nephi got 4 more lassos on hands and feet and went zap at the zombies and got all of them. He worked on the church because the church fell down. He worked, ate some lunch, worked. I feel like this is what we're seeing now I just feel like what's going on in the church is they're just trying to keep it standing because it's already like starting to crumble. Because the truth is just coming out and people are leaving in droves, but they're not publicizing any of that, right? You hear how many baptisms each year, but they don't tell you how many people have their names taken off the records. So then a huge giant came, and Nephi got out his slingshot and found a teensy rock and threw it right in the giant's head. So this is funny because she's seeing again the destruction of the giants again in the end times, which she states different sizes of giants, right? And so you have all the different levels, and I have some imagery to go along with this that we'll look at, the Nephilim, the Nephal, and then the children of the Nephal, and the different levels of the hybridization that happens when you get out from the origination of conception. He worked, and the big giant whistled, and 200,000 giants came to destroy him, which I thought was interesting because there was originally 200 fallen that left their first estate and came and created the children of men. And this was 200,000 giants. And so I feel like this is their posterity that she's pointing to in this dream. He used nose, cheeks, fingers, hands, feet, toes, and more lassos to kill him. And all the giants fell down. Nephi threw the giants in the garbage. the biggest giant comes, and Nephi says, I believe in myself. He digged and got a big, huge rock, put it in his slingshot, and he killed the hugest giant. He got out his sword and stabbed all the other giants in the world. And that was the end. So I just thought that was fascinating, because I feel like that's what we're going to see. And that's why this topic's so important, because they're main key players in the end time scenario of the wars that are going to come, and the ones who are starting and creating the wars, the ones that are going to come up from underground, the ones who are going to come down and say they're extraterrestrials. They're all of the same fallen. They're all related to each other. It's the children of the children of the children's children of the fallen. And they're all the ones who are. And so our goal as Christians is just to kind of like stay out of the mix, and not get caught on the crossfire. So I just kind of wanted to share that vision or it was a dream. I found that, and I thought that was a fascinating little prophecy from my daughter. Is there anything you want to say about that before?
No. Yeah, that's very interesting. I know that people might scoff at the ideas of underground and whatnot. We talked about the dumbs last time, but even if you don't want to believe in that, think of the underground cities in Seattle. There's a full city underneath the city, and there's a full city underneath most cities, just so we know that. There also used to be subways in California that they used, and now they don't. And it's curious, because they have so many people that why not? Why would they not be just like New York and California?
I didn't know they use subways, but that's crazy, because when I've gone to do land deliverance here, when I've gone to do land deliverance here all over where I live in Southern California, I see all these underground tunnels. I ride past them all the time on my bike, and they're really big openings. And some of them, like I went to do some deliverance on a Catholic church and was blessing the land there and walking around and dropping oil. And they're like, you look out over the back, and that's where all of these big, huge, massive waterways are. They're supposed to be tunnels for like the water, but I'm like, it'd sure be easy for people to just walk right through there. And they have trails that go all the way to Mexico. So I know the human trafficking here underground has been huge, because they have easy access to Mexico. But so then
they
the other
have
thing,
a lot of subways there that I don't know what the deal is, if they said they were not safe or what, but they said there are 20,603 subway. Oh wait, hold on. That's in New York. Hold on. Let me go back. Anyway, they had a whole system that they used to use. I'll find the number, but I'm gonna have to look into that, because we've got those channels all over here. I didn't realize they were for subways. I knew they were there, but I didn't know what they were for. So interesting. I'm gonna look at that number. How many locations?
Okay.
Not
so the other thing
anymore.
No, they're definitely not.
Nope.
The other thing that we touched on that I wanted to go a little deeper into was I had shared some things about this hermaphrodite that I had to put a catheter in the emergency room. And I didn't really go into why I brought that up, because it threw me off for a really long time, because I was like, okay, what's up? We were talking about the gay agenda and the rainbow and all of that stuff, right? And so as a Christian, as a Mormon at the time, I saw this person, that had both parts. And I'll just be graphic and describe what I saw, because a lot of people have no idea that this even exists or what it is.
It's real.
And for me, I was 17 years old, still in high school, working in the emergency room. And and I went into the room. They called me in and said, it's they said a male cath in this room. So I brought in a male cath kit, undid everything, lift up the blanket and go to put it in, and there's no penis. And so I'm like, wait a second, I have the wrong catheter kit. How embarrassing. This is like a transsexual or what? So I grab the kit and I go out and I go back to the charge nurse, and I'm like, wait, what's going on? And she's like, oh, you've never put a catheter in this person before. They come in like once a month because they have testing that they need to have done or something like that. So she said, just go in or get a female cath. And when you get in there, you'll see it's just like a female cath. And in the ER, I was called the cath queen, because I was really good at hitting a woman's
hit the spot. Yep.
Without getting it into the wrong hole. And then
sometimes there's a lot of places,
and then you have to start over. Yeah. So, I go in and I got to do a full up close exploration at 17 years old of what it looks like to have, partially undeveloped testicles hanging down at the back of the labia majora. There was no labia minora, the inner. It was just labia majora. And then at the back, where the testicles would form into the scrotum, the scrotum was separated into two separate parts at the back of the labia. And then there was two undeveloped small testicles at the very back. And then up at the top where there would be a penis, there was just a really either an undeveloped penis or a incredibly large clitoris is what, it looked like in there. Yeah. And then I'd met some other people since then who had talked about how she was, she said she was transgendered, but she said if she was to go to the doctor and have a scan done of her insides, which she had opted not to do because they'd already done blood testing and she makes so much testosterone that they wouldn't even put her on testosterone. But it's called intersex. And so there's a lot of people who up inside of their uterus or they have testes. And so then they make testosterone, but they present on the outside as a female. So this is where being a Christian, I get really confused for years and was like, I don't have answers because I can't say being gay is wrong when God makes something like this that's neither male nor female, right? So after all these years, I go through and just honestly carrying a prayer in the back of my mind that God would make it make sense at some point. And I think I mentioned I was going to teach that class called the Two Spirit, because I had gotten to the point where I felt like, well, in the Indians, they have these people that are born and they feel like they're neither male nor female, and they kind of become, and they're unable to have children because some of them were two spirit in spirit, and it was a spiritual feeling that they had. And some people were like two spirit in the physical, kind of like this hermaphrodite. Right. But they have been putting chemicals in our water for so long. You look at the frogs, and they have frogs who have been genetically changed. They will mutate, complete opposite sex. And so after all these years of me being confused and just not knowing and thinking God did this, I've come to the conclusion that I believe man did this, and that these are genetically modified humans because of whether it's scientific medical testing, whether it's what they're putting in the water in certain places.
It's a hormone. They say it's connected to the hormone in the water. Yep. That's what they say. And that if they cannot breed, not just those lizards, but many other lizards and some octopus and different things, they can regenerate, or they can do certain things like change their sex for just save their species. Like if they're all male and they're in a pot of all males, one will change to a female to continue life. And that's just how it is. And so, I don't know what they're doing to us or how, but, it makes you wonder about water, makes you wonder about vaccines. It makes you wonder about a lot of things. So,
yeah, absolutely. And so that's where I kind of feel like I feel sad for, this mass population of people on the earth who there's a whole intersex community who there's variations, of
there's more
how
than
this manifests.
There's more than just that. I've known a lady that had 2 full uteruses in one vagina, and she got pregnant in both of them at different times because she ovulated separately. And so one baby was 4 months and one baby was 7 months. And we knew it was like twins, but it wasn't twins. They were totally, it was almost like it was going to be a twin and it didn't divide correctly. And so,
oh my gosh,
things can happen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, and then you have the satanic rituals where they're still calling in the fallen and breeding Nephilim, and if they're worshiping Baphomet, and that's another thing I've even just only started to wonder just this week as I was thinking about talking about this is it's hard. It was hard for me to believe for a long time, but now I'm starting to understand more what they can actually do through witchcraft, the powers of these fallen angels when they're creating, they may not even need chemicals. They may be creating some of these offspring intentionally with both parts to try to mimic the God. So there's something that I posted on my YouTube this week, and it's from a conversation with a man named, oh gosh, now I can't think of his name, but anyway, his wife, Erica, I have a bunch of stuff posted about them, and I've watched, they have a 22-part that they're still releasing parts on documentary. She was trained up in witchcraft in her family, and he was almost inducted into the Illuminati through music, but they're Christians now, and they're out of I can't remember the African country, but he was reading from the Bible and really expounding on some things that I knew and understood in my spirit, but I didn't know how to vocalize it because I had seen this in vision before. But it makes a lot of sense how God is, when he created Adam and Eve, how they were created in his image. And there's been a lot of people talking to me about this lately, sending me messages like, hey, oh my gosh, we're androgynous. It says they, them, and people are claiming they're they, them now. And it says he created them, male and female. And it's like, oh, we're both, because you've got the whole yin and yang. And so people talk about how we have male and female energies. Well, Bubba, that's his name. Not Bubba. Oh, sorry. I'm so bad with names sometimes, but they're amazing. You'll find the video if you follow my Instagram. Go watch it, because the way he explains, he reads it from the scripture and he goes into the Hebrew, and the way he explains the division when God created Adam, when he created his spirit, Eve was still inside of him. And then when he created Adam in his physical body, because one of the verses when it says he created them, I think in Genesis 1, and then in Genesis 2 is when they're in the garden. So first he created his spirit, and he created them male and female, and that's within one spirit being. But that's not androgyny. This is where like the Baphomet thing comes in and does this counterfeit of trying to make it, oh, they're both, it's like she was birthed inside of him. And so then and he talks about how they were created inside of God. They were birthed inside of God, their spirits. And then he creates their bodies. And first he creates Adam. And when he named the animals, Eve was still inside of him. And then he goes into the words that were used when he formed Adam or when he built Eve, which were two different words. And then he took her out of him by the rib. And so he goes into this details. Well, it's just fascinating because I feel like that's what this whole gay agenda, trans agenda, the fallen angels agenda, the twisting and counterfeiting of everything that God created to be holy and pure has been made into something filthy and this weird counterfeit, like Baphomet idea that one being is breasts and a penis, weird stuff like that. And so it's just fascinating to me that
because they didn't become a they, just like the yin yang. Okay. It would be just nothing if it wasn't together as a whole. So they are a them when they come together and make the whole spirit, like together, the masculine and the feminine coming together.
And
to
that's
make life. Yes.
Right. And that's what he talks about because this specific episode where he talks about it's about sex magic. So he's talking about the sacredness of sex and how, essentially every man is created with his partner inside of him. We have a chosen one, like Adam was given Eve, a specific person. Your spouse is birthed inside of you. And so that's what my post is about, why I don't really believe in dating anymore, because I feel like we're on a hunt. Adam should be on a hunt for his missing rib. Eve is trying to find the man whose rib she is missing from, and there's a specific person that he created us with a whole purpose. And so when you come together in a sexual union, he talks about how you literally leave. That's what the climax is when you leave your body, you meet with God. It's a meeting with God. And that's what the bliss comes from, and how you're supposed to be able to have visions and creation in that experience. So anyway, I highly recommend people go watch that episode 22 on, it's called Life is Spiritual. The whole series is amazing, but this specific part just really spoke to me in this journey of trying to figure out what is this thing that I saw, and what does that mean about if there is more than a male or a female or two sexes, or how does being gay fit into all of that? And it's
so pushed too. There's huge agendas. It's so hard to know, isn't it? Like, our daughter's gay and we constantly say, okay, that may be your choice, but we don't do groups here. Like, we're not flying a flag. I don't fly one for my straight son. Like, come on.
Yeah.
And she's very
Yeah.
like the same way. She doesn't like it either. She's like, just because I'm gay doesn't mean I want to go be a part of some weird thing. Or like my other niece, I've tried to do this with her with Black Lives Matter because she's half Black. And I'm like, you guys know this is all just crap, right? Like, no matter what, at the end of the day, like that doesn't make you you. That doesn't make you you. Like, come on, and they want these kids in boxes, like all these little boxes so that they can conform. It's all about conformity, really, when they make them believe it's about not conforming and rebelling. And that's the beauty in it, because what do teenagers and stuff want to do? They want to rebel, but it's really not, because if everyone's the same, then you're really not rebelling. Like, well, so I'm not saying there's no gay. I'm not saying there's no gay people that feel gay inside or anything like that. I'm just saying for the teenager agenda. That's all I'm saying on that. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and so since I was a young teenager, my mom talked to me about the Illuminati's gay, like trans agenda, how there was literally an agenda to, set out to turn people from one. And she would have known, she had insider information. I always just thought it was like her little shows she would listen to on the side that she found stuff out. But over the years, I've realized she was very preemptive with all of her information. She had insight into the future, before it became a thing in the public and was being talked about, because whatever her role is in, that group, she knows the agendas that are coming, because the satanic
if you look at like
their own
look at the movie stars, like from the olden days. And back then they could get away with it with a good boob job because everybody was kind of thin. And if you go back and look at some of these people, they got straight up Adam's apples and the collarbones. I mean, we got some Michelle Obamas over there too.
Oh yeah.
And some of them would be like really surprising to people. And I don't really care, like whatever you choose to do, but like I care about what's behind it. Like what you're saying, like they're pushing us to be like the Nephilim, like they were neither male or female. So, okay, there you go. Like, and also the last time humanity was messed with and they started creating things they shouldn't, including chimeras and humans, God came back. So I'm assuming that they're trying to get enough under his skin that he'll be like, okay, let's go,
Well, and like you said, the angels are androgynous. A lot of them, I would assume, the ones, especially the ones that were never intended to create, these watchers who came down and laid. So it also could be, we're just doing conjecture here, but it also could be their children, don't end up fully one or the other, because it's a counterfeit spirit, and so you end up with a counterfeit human.
They can present as whatever they want, but truly they are neither male nor female in their spirit. But they can take over or be. I mean, you have to remember, they can be what they want to be. They can show up to you as an alien or an angel. They can show up to you as,
because these angels are shapeshifters.
Yeah,
and I'm sure that's how the actual shapeshifters that we have here, get that ability from their parents, the fallen. So anyway, moving on to the curses of leprosy that we were talking about last time. And I didn't get too far in my study there, but definitely enough just to be able to say, and I think everybody probably knows this, but the curse of leprosy, talking about how they would go away white as snow, was always from sin. It was a curse of sin. And in Miriam's case, who was Moses' sister, when she went away white as snow, it was because her and Aaron were judging Moses' wife because she was Ethiopian. Like she was in judgment, like, well, what, me and Aaron, we've both prophesied. Why do we have to believe what Moses is saying right now? Are we not prophets too? And this is when God came and was like, no, like Moses is away. Just because you have a gift of prophecy, Moses is my prophet, and struck her with leprosy. And that was when she went away white as snow. But I just found it really interesting that it's because she was judging his wife. It says right in there that because she was Ethiopian. And so it's early on, they were having, seed war. Where are you from? Who's your parents? What's your blood? What's your race? What's your ethnicity? And it didn't necessarily say anything about who this Ethiopian's gods were. But then you go into the Book of Mormon, and we talked about some interesting things that were said in the Book of Mormon. So you looked up and tried to find that. So I would love for you to share.
Yes, I found it. Just a couple of them, because we don't have a whole lot of time to spend on this. But I did want to say a lot of people were asking, where do we find this in the Book of Mormon? We can't find it. Well, that's because it's been removed. So Second Nephi, chapter 5 in 1920s said, the rebellious cursed with a dark skin. In 1981, it was revised to the Lamanites are cursed, receive a skin of blackness, and become a scourge unto the Nephites. And in 2013, it is now, well, and I don't think they've done it since then, but I'm unsure of that. But in 2013, it says the Lamanites are cut off from the presence of the Lord, are cursed, and become a scourge unto the Nephites. They took out the skin of blackness. That's one. The second one was Mormon chapter 5. The Lamanites shall be a dark, filthy, and loathsome people. And they changed it to the Lamanites and took out all that in the middle, will be scattered, and the spirit will cease to strive with them. Nothing about being dark anymore. Even though we were taught about this when we were kids, this was in the Book of Mormons. If you can find old Book of Mormons, it's there, but they are wiping it from their history, as they have done so many times. The Book of Mormon has been revised hundreds of times.
What about where it talked about being white and delightsome, or fair and delightsome?
That is actually from the prophets speaking. So Brigham Young was one that spoke of being white and delightsome, and his quote was, buy up all the native children that we can so we can convert them and make them white and delightsome. And Ezra Taft Benson also said, we have had success with our Lamanite brothers who have come and been baptized and become more white and delightsome. These are talks that they've given. And that's only two that I can pull like right out of my brain, but there's a bunch. I mean, you can find a lot.
The oh, my brain just went blank. Well, essentially what we were talking about last time, why we bring this up, is because we were talking about how, slavery, and how, if anything, they enslaved, the black man because they were these original Hebrews and they were God's chosen people, the darker skinned ones, and how everything since history has been changed, has been turned that, like, that the light skin or the white skin is greater. And especially in Mormonism, there was this big focus on it. It was something that was definitely talked about often. But yeah, the fact that they're changing all of this, that it was in the Book of Mormon, that it was talked about, and that it seems to be the way the Mormons talked about it is backwards from what like the true history was, and what the Bible says about, the Gentiles, who would be more the Americans or the white people, or the unchosen tribe.
Right.
Which there's the Jews and the Gentiles, and the first shall be last and the last shall be first. So I think that's where the Book of Mormon borrows the idea from the covenant, moving from one to the other.
I just found Second Nephi still says to this day, Second Nephi 5:21, and he had caused the cursing to come upon them, yea, even a sore cursing because of their iniquity. For behold, they had hardened their hearts against him, and they had become like unto a flint. So black, flint or black. Wherefore, as they were white and exceedingly fair and delightsome, that they may not be enticing unto the people of the Lord God, because he did cause a skin of blackness to come upon them. Yeah.
Wow. See, there you go.
Yep. Continues Second Nephi 12 through 15 as well. Yeah.
Well, and that's the exact opposite of what the Book of Mormon, or the Bible says about when the curse of leprosy. It was always they went away white and their skin turned white as snow, and that was the curse. So
the only times in the Bible we see the white people originally was albinism, like Noah, or leprosy, or some kind of weird thing that had happened. That wasn't a thing. I mean, brown and black people were way more common. And so, yeah. Yep. Noah the albino. There we go. So,
yeah, they were scared. And it talks about in Enoch's record. We won't read through all this, but if you want to go look it up, it's right there where it talks about how Enoch, they were worried about him when he was born. Wondering, the birth of Noah is recorded in similar mystical terms as the ones who brought forth the giants. They were worried because he had this countenance glorious, and as he looks as if he not belonged to me but to the angels, I am afraid lest something miraculous should take place in the earth. Because it was a sign of his greatness.
Of
Well,
the
and I would
fallen,
say
and of the fallen. Yeah, they were white. I mean,
and I haven't fully read through this all. I would say it would be a mark to tell that was he was a prophet to them, because his work was to go and prophesy to them that the world was going to be flooded and that they needed to repent, and that but we know that his bloodline was pure. He did come from a pure bloodline, but it just seems almost like this different prophecy,
that they were scared of that because of his looks, but they compare it to the angels because they didn't have anything else to compare it to. So
almost like he needed to look like them to be able to go and prophesy to them,
right,
so that he could almost like a mark on him of being similar to them. Because that was who most of his work was not even trying to convert. Like, it's interesting because they say, I might have mentioned this last time, that Noah was, a prophet for 100 and whatever, 80 years it was that he was building the ark, or he was evangelizing and didn't have one convert, but his work was to warn that they would be destroyed. Obviously he wouldn't have been building the ark if anybody was going to be saved. God knew he was going to be wiping the entire earth out. But this is interesting. And that's, you can look that up online if you want to read through that whole thing, but that validates, that it's a worrisome thing that people go,
it wasn't the normal.
What does that mean?
That's for sure.
Yeah. Okay, so let me just stop my share here. And where'd my notes go? Before we move on, I'm trying to see if that was the last thing we wanted to cover. Yeah, before. Okay, so let's move over and talk about what's going on right now in the kind of SRA communications about let's see. Sorry, just give me 1 second to pull this screen up.
While she's pulling that up, I did find that in LA, it was in 1955 that they shut down the subways because they said that they were not done correctly and that they were dangerous. So there is a whole system underneath, not just there, but many places, I'm certain, that have the tunnels for subways in downtown's LA subway tunnels. So they have it there. So not just there, I'm sure a lot of places. Yeah.
All right. Well, so can you see my screen now?
Yep.
Are we on this? Okay. So there is this couple in the Mormon, well, they're, how should I explain them?
The LDS, yeah.
President Nelson, who is the Mormon prophet right now, Russell M. Nelson, his son-in-law, and I think I touched on this last time. We didn't go too deep into it, but his son-in-law and daughter were accused, Brenda and Dick Miles, accused of perpetrating many victims. I mean, I think they said there was at least 16 that came forward, and it was connected to this book called Paper Dolls. And this talks about, so in Paper Dolls, this is a book that's not in print anymore. You can't even find it. And there's pseudonyms throughout the whole story. And so it's kind of complicated. But rumor has it, and I full well believe it, that because it fits the same story of what is happening in these prosecutions in the news right now. Not even right. Well, I shouldn't say right now because it's been swept under the rug, but this book is supposed to be about these same people, Brenda and Dick Miles. And this was written in, was it well, let's see. I don't know if it was written in 1996, but I mean, it was written some time ago. And the same family is the same family that was brought up and everything in the neighborhoods when the Glenn Pace papers and the Satanic Panic in the early days. So you've got the people who came out in, see, what I want to point out here is if you look at the dates here on these websites, you've got the 2020. There's one in 2022. This is just somebody who's bringing it back up, who's talking about it. But since 2020, when, you know, the lockdown came about, you've got 2018, these are all pretty old articles. We're in 2023 and we've got 2018 and 2020. This stuff was being talked about. Because of COVID, it got pushed under the rug and it didn't get really pushed into the mainstream. You've got the couple right here. This is them. And
they're very white and delightsome. I'm sorry.
And she's got a little bit of the redhead thing going on. She's very fair. Yeah.
For
yep.
sure.
And so this couple, if you read the stories, I mean, it's insane what they've been accused of. I won't go into all of it, but like, right here it says, the most recent example of accusations against the Mormon church leadership involves the current president of the church, Russell M. Nelson. Nelson's a retired surgeon. Well, I won't read all that. It was reported that a lawsuit was attempting to force Nelson to testify regarding allegations of his daughter and son-in-law, which had been involved in sexual abuse of children. And they called them Jane Doe and John Doe in, you know, most of the stuff in the news, because of course he was trying to keep his name out of the mix. And so this Richard Miles, Dick Miles, he's the one that my dad was locker partners with at the temple when they worked at the temple together and was going to open up a grocery store with him. Oh, wow. And so 1985, a man only identified as a perpetrator in the court papers sexually abused his children. The lawsuit claims a 16-year-old babysitter was both victim and abuser and later committed suicide. So there's just some really shady stuff in this case. It goes and
she was
connects
suicided.
To that.
No,
right?
We don't have any proof of that.
Yeah.
We're just saying.
Is she? Well, and so then the reason that I bring this up right now is because the video that I posted that's going to hit, well, by the time this gets out, you guys will already hopefully you've already seen it, but there's a video that I'm publishing on my channel that is, so this man, David Hamblin, he's huge in the news right now. Everybody's talking about him, you know, being the Satanist who satanically ritually abused his own daughters and many other people, and affiliated with a bunch of other people in the Mormon church, including David Levitt, who is a politician.
Levitt ran for his life in Scotland.
Right. Yeah. He took off and left when this all came about. But so the reason I bring this up is because this is a distraction, and they are making David Hamblin out to be the fall guy for the entire Mormon church. And it bothers me because everybody's talking about this right now, and this has been going on for 10 years. And you've got people like Goel who are out there just digging up every single thing they can on it, going on to podcasts, talking about this David Hamblin case. Why isn't anybody talking about Dick and Brenda Miles? And why did that just get brushed under the rug? You know, this is what the church does. They let
have to
so
take
much
the
out.
Heat. Well, they have to take the heat off the prophet. That's just the truth. And then all the stuff coming out.
He's not a general authority, so they want him to, you know, be the one in the spotlight because he's not a general authority. They don't want the whole
and he
church
looks bad
to fall.
because then, he did drugs and this and that. And also on top of it, you know, they don't want any more focus on Nelson because he's a Skull and Bones member. He's an Allen Key member. His stuff looks really shady and people are paying attention. And so they've got to do a big thing away from all that. And so, of course, this guy just pissed off the wrong person. He's taking the fall for everything. Levitt got the heck out of here, and they just served him up on a platter. So that's
Yep.
how I feel.
That's right. And that's what's going on. You've got their agenda in the works, and so you have and that's the next thing I want to move to is all these little agendas that are going on right now. You've got so here's paper dolls. Just let me go into this for another second. So in 2018, the Cardston children, which are named in this book. This is just from a review on Amazon of the book, which isn't really even available anymore. But these are supposedly the decipher alias names from the book. But he says in 2018, the Cardston children, then adults, brought a lawsuit against Russell M. Nelson's daughter and son-in-law, Brenda and Dick Miles. They were in the same ward with the Carstons in 1985. Bill was the clerk and Dick was the counselor in the bishopric. Marion, in 2004, reported the Miles explicitly. Paper dolls only gave hints. The book explained how the organized sex ring, led by Giant and the Witch, were making child porn. Marion's report told how the police called Brenda Miles well in advance of their search warrant, giving her enough time to destroy any evidence. So yeah, you just see, they set them up. The church brushed it away because the point of this is that why is that so important? Because like we talked about last time, you don't just start molesting children as a grown adult. Like this couple is from generational incest. And so when you have the prophet of the Mormon church's daughter being accused of this stuff, and if you go read the reports, like people always go, well, there's no proof. I can't stand listening to podcasts when there's people on there going, well, I don't know, where's the proof? Nobody's ever proven. It's like, yeah, these satanic,
because they dropped the case. Yeah, they put it under
and
a rug.
if there is proof, their gatekeepers hide it. And
well, let's be real. Who's the Masons? Oh, they're the attorneys, the judges, the doctors. Really? Right. We're going to get a fair trial. Right. Okay.
And even when you do have proof for a child saying, hey, like, people who you've heard a child themselves say, yes, this person was molesting me. And you go to the police and you have a child telling the police, this is what they did to me. And they go, well, we can't prove it. They still say that crap, And so it doesn't matter if you have proof. When I read stuff like this and you go and you read the allegations and they are detailed stuff that you couldn't make up if you wanted to, because your brain
it's so
can't
weird.
Fathom that kind of weird ass shit without very clear experiences. Then you go, okay, this is legit, and so I'm like, I don't need a prosecution to believe that this is going on within their family. And when his own daughter as an adult is sexually abusing children, then that tells me something about who her father is and what was done to her as a child. And looking at the generational iniquity on a bloodline is incredibly important when it comes to families right now, which a lot of our brains haven't processed. First thing when somebody comes to me as an adult and starts talking to me about what was done to them as a child or how they acted out as an adult in having issues in the relationship or trauma that they have as an adult, I always go, who was touching you or who was touching your parents or them? You have to go through the chain because it doesn't just come out of nowhere. Right. So here's some of the articles, and I'll put some of these in the description box so you can go and look into this. But the LDS church president at the center of decades old sex abuse cover-up allegations. And there's March 9th, 1980 something. This is what was said to them by Neil A. Maxwell. A former member of the church's Quorum of 12 who has since passed away gave them a blessing and told them to forgive and forget when they came forward the victims, talking lovely. About, hey, the prophet's daughter and son-in-law have been abusing me. So of course their gatekeeper, the whoever, they just send a general authority in and cover it up and soothsay it away.
They have to get rid of that one because it's too close. It's too close to the prophet. There's no way.
Yep. So this is, if you want to talk about something, who cares about David Hamblin? My video, I did peyote with him and I've been talking about that. I hadn't talked about that in the past, but I'm releasing this information now. This interview was done back in June. And I got threatened to be sued. It's really interesting because I actually put the video in of the girl who threatened to sue me, of the video that she sent me on Marco Polo of her like listing all of these names that she said she didn't list. And the reason that she came trying to sue me after I brought up her name. So there's a video of her in there, but I blurred her face and changed her voice so she doesn't have anything to say now. But it proves that, you know, her little lawsuit that she came at me with was a joke. But that was all about what I was talking about, was having sat in a peyote ceremony under David Hamblin, having served it. And yeah, he's a horrible guy. The stuff that he did to his children are nasty. But what they're trying to do is make it so Goel is out there pushing this idea that within the Mormon church, and he's given it his own little name, which is just annoys me actually, because he calls it the LDS satanic cult inside, that's hidden as imposters inside of the Mormon church.
That's not the only one. There's a few that are going off and talking about it like that. Yep. Yeah.
You're right. There's other podcasters and people who
big ones
can see, because they're all saying the same stuff, tooting the same horn, telling the same story, regurgitating the exact same stuff, and it's all focused on David Hamblin. And their whole job is to make it look like, oh, there's this little church with this couple politicians and a couple weird peyote guys, and they've, you know, molested a whole bunch of people within the church. So that's what you're hearing about, you know. And it's like, no, this goes all the way to the highest echelons. You've got your prophet and all of his 12. I actually had an insider source that I can't talk about, but somebody who called me and said they have intel of the entire 12, the general authorities, of all of their rituals that are going on. They have times, dates, places, witnesses. And what they said is the problem is they can't find anybody to persecute. They brought proof and information, and they can't find anybody who will prosecute.
Nope, because they're all Mormon.
Yeah, and I had to tell him, I said, well, that's because you've got gatekeepers. Every one of your judges is a gatekeeper set in that point, you know, elected, probably chosen before his birth. You're going to go into this position. You're going to go to law school. You're going to become a judge. You're going to cover this for us. They plan for years and years in advance and give people these assignments. And so that's where we're at the point now. You've got nearly every cop, nearly every attorney, they're all Freemasons. And so they're all going to cover and bury this for everyone at the very top. And if they don't, they're going to end up dead, you know? And so they don't have any power or control to do anything, which is why you better get into your Bible. You better get into prayer. You better learn spiritual warfare, because this stuff is not going away, and it's so huge, and it's all the way to the top. So, you know, more people need to quit talking about, if you're out there and you're not part of the agenda, you need to quit talking about that, about David Hamblin, and start talking about Russell M. Nelson and exposing the beast for who he is all the way to the top, because it just bothers me how that's been brushed under the rug, you know, because so then you go over and you see this is all of the stuff on David Hamblin, and it's all 2023. In his case is old too. His case is as old as the other one, you know, the one guy who accused him of sodomy in his office, this guy, he's an adult now. He's like a grown man, you know, and it's like, and why are we still talking about this? These are all current in the news, but all this other stuff is all old, you know? So it's like, there's an agenda there, clearly. And here's where it names David Levitt. And isn't it interesting how their names are always David? Did you know that they call it the key of David, the sodomy ritual? They say they're giving him the key of David. So that's probably that Solomonic magic. Is that how you say it?
Wow.
These people love to name their children Bible names, especially David.
Look at Sodomites. I think also it means something just, doesn't it? Definition.
Probably. I don't.
Let's see.
The name, David?
Yeah, the actual name. What is the Bible? I'll find it. I think it means something about just. Let me see. I'll find out. Favorite means favorite. Beloved or favorite. So that's also interesting.
Right.
But
so they'll
pin things on people that are really old, you know. just because,
Yeah.
or to take away, or somebody, they're not going to be able to, I'll tell you, unless they have absolute proof, they're not going to get the one guy that you did peyote with, because he's protected under religious persecution laws, not because he's LDS, because he broke off the LDS and said he was like a healer, witch doctor type thing. I don't know exactly what he called himself, but like, unless they have an underage person that's willing to come forth, I don't know what they're going to do, you know?
Well, yeah, a lot of these people, whether or not they ever get prosecuted,
And the
is
statute of limitations.
honestly the least of my,
Yeah.
not the least of my worries, but I don't expect, this key. It says in the Bible, a kingdom divided can't stand. And the satanic beast system has infiltrated the entire government. And so, no, they're not going to prosecute their own. And if they do, it's just to make it look like, well, see, we did something to somebody. And then that's your
Right.
fall guy. And there's a million other people behind him who are way higher and more dangerous than that person.
Absolutely.
I was going to try to find, there was something here in one of the articles. Now I can't remember which one it was, but it talked about how Dick Nilsson was upset because the charges, they changed the law in Utah where the statute of limitations, I guess, was extended, and so that's why they were going to allow. And that was his argument. I had it pulled up on one of these. That was his argument, was that here it is. The Miles brought a motion to dismiss, arguing that the new 2015 statute extending the time to sue perpetrators was unconstitutional, which pisses me off because honestly, I don't think there should be a statute of limitations when it comes to sexual abuse, especially where that they're fracturing people's minds and they intentionally put them into these DID, multiple personalities, and then they can't retain because they fractured. So by the time they remember, they specifically set these statutes of limitations according to when they know the DID programming usually breaks and the memories start coming back. Well, it's too late. Now you have your memories
not
back
usually
of what happened
till
to you when you
late
were little.
30s,
Too bad.
early 40s. Yep.
So it's intentional for sure. So they say our case was stayed so that the very issue could be determined by the Utah Supreme Court in Mitchell versus Roberts. Our case was eviscerated when it was determined that these claims could not be revived and that this statute was unconstitutional. And with the case dismissed with prejudice, it is difficult to imagine how the public might learn if the accusations were true. And clearly, no one will be held accountable for the alleged crimes. They changed the law and they were like, oh, that law's not fair. You just changed that law, and so now we're going to get and so they just dismissed it. It's like, and then people are out there voting and like, we got to change the laws and it's like, no, we're in the book of Revelations. Like, that's not happening. You got to get to the spiritual warfare.
Yep.
So the next crazy thing that we've got going on is yesterday, M. Russell Ballard, Mormon leader and second in line to church presidency, dies at 95. Did you know about this?
Yes. Just this morning, though.
Okay. So, you've got, which is the reason this is interesting is because we talk a lot about Tim Ballard, right? And so I have exposed for years that I knew Tim Ballard's CFO for several years was an old best friend of mine. It was her husband. And so they used to fly his team around on their plane and they were friends with them, and they had a house here and a house in Utah, my friend did. And so they were back and forth and she would always tell me stories. So before any of this stuff was in the news, I knew a lot of the stuff. I knew that Tim was seasoned in visiting psychics, that he had a psychic that picks out his clothes every day for him, that he had psychics who try to help him locate children. And what she had told me is that M. Russell Ballard, once a month, Tim Ballard was required to go and meet with him to report to him how they were doing in their, work in with OUR.
Finding him kids.
Which I thought, yeah, even then I thought that was so weird. I was like,
Right.
why would you need to meet with him? And then they try to act like they're not related. There's no way that somehow they're not related. They're like, oh, there's no relation. Okay, so check this.
I had the opportunity this past summer to travel to Plymouth, Massachusetts with my friend Tim Ballard to learn more about what he had learned regarding Nephi's vision of these early pilgrims and how their history corroborates Nephi's vision. Had the opportunity.
Okay, what is he calls him his friend, first of all. And so obviously they have a little secret relationship going on. And so I just got to say this right up front. What I believe is going on with Tim Ballard is that I believe I also have somebody who just before all of this came out, he was going on missions. He just recently went on a mission for Tim Ballard just a few months ago before really it was right when Sound of Freedom hit and everybody started going, oh, Tim's a Freemason, you know? And so he knows, he told me straight up, they don't rescue kids and they don't claim to rescue kids. A lot of people don't realize that. They don't claim to rescue kids. They claim to go and locate children. And then they work with the local government to try to get their local police or whatever involved to rescue the kids. So I think what they're doing is procuring, if being the finders. If we find them, then they work with the local government to get them. And then they only work in other countries. Why? Because they don't have the birth certificates. So it's really easy for child trafficking. And we know, you know, if the Mormon religion is one of the here we've got it right here. The organizations that was exposed as being the child trafficking networks, the Masons, which is, you know, the Priory of Sion, the Templars, Grand High Lodge leaders, the Catholic Church, the Mormons, the Cabal, and the Satanists. So if they're set up to traffic children and you've got Tim Ballard and Russell Ballard meeting to try to talk about rescuing children, the only natural assumption would be that they're helping funnel children to the Mormon church, you know, from these other countries because they don't have birth certificates. You can't track these children from these other countries. And Tim doesn't ever come out and show all these children that he saved. He's been doing it for years, millions and millions of dollars, and he has literally nothing to show for it.
And they're so showy about everything. Don't you think they would have took a picture? Like, come on.
Right.
I mean,
well, and that's what
are always like, look at the turkeys that we bought, or look at the stuff that we did, or look at the money that we gave, and look at the receipts. Like, they're very showy people. And so I can't imagine that he wouldn't have took a picture. Come on.
So and the things that they say is, well, for their protection, for their anonymity, you know, we can't, which is a lie because you've got right there. It's just a lie because there's a guy named Troy Brewer who's a Christian pastor, and he actually does what Tim claims to be doing in his ministry. He doesn't have a whole team. He just kind of does it himself through his ministry and has a group of people in other countries that help him. But he actually does build homes. He actually does have centers, and he's there all the time. And he actually puts out videos of it. And the children are always on the videos and they're running around. And it's like, Tim's full of crap if he's telling you that, because just go look at what Troy Brewer's doing and you can compare notes and see what it really looks like when you're actually rescuing children in other countries. So now listen to this one.
A library with thousands upon thousands of volumes and books. I was in there just taking it all in.
So that right there, you have Ballard and Ballard right there together working on their, you know, their political things. And who was it? I just read something. It was, I think, I got to go to the article. I think that President Ballard is, he's the great grandson of Hiram Smith.
Oh, which is Joseph Smith's brother, everybody, just so you know.
Right. So you've got the bloodline, the Joseph Smith bloodline, which we've suspected is, you know, a Nephilim hybrid bloodline. And now he's dead. And so you've got let's see, where is it? Right here where they started getting in their argument. Church of Jesus Christ, Ballard says he has never released tithing records to OUR or any other organization. They are responding to what is alleged because Tim Ballard started, making these claims. A new filing in a lawsuit against Tim Ballard and Operation Underground Railroad contains the jaw-dropping assertion about a senior leader of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Let's see, what was it that he said that he had done? I know it's in one of these posts. Let's see. Yeah, it says they have no relation right here. No relation, which I really just don't believe that. It's not a coincidence.
Mm-mm. There's always something.
Well, look how friendly.
Repent.
Repent.
I don't buy it.
I know, right? Let's see. Is it this one? Referencing learning more. Okay, no. One is it this one? According to Tim Ballard, he presented the couple's ruse plan to M. Russell Ballard, who thought it was brilliant and specifically sanctioned the strategy. Okay, so this is what I've been talking about. I've been saying, look, in these brotherhoods, what God's been telling me is, the wicked's going to destroy the wicked. These brother men they don't like each other, and they turn on each other. And Ballard puts this movie out, thinks he's going to run for president. And another thing that he said in one of his ketamine, he goes and does ketamine and then goes under and does like these prophetic like channelings with this person. I can't remember who it is.
Which is like completely not part of the church. They totally say, oh, you shouldn't do that, blah, 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 which I mean.
Yeah. Well, none of the stuff he does is, he's using psychics and he's.
Yeah.
So it says that he believes that he's going to be the prophet to reign in the millennium and of the Mormon church, that Tim Ballard, and then also, that he's going to be the next president. So he's going to be the prophet and the president. And all of a sudden he's in a fight with M. Russell with what's his name? With Ballard, the other Ballard, the general authority. They're fighting it in the media because Tim Ballard exposes him and says he backed him up on some stuff. Now it puts the church in a bad light. So I don't know whose hands are dirty, but if you go watch DJ Norman on my channel, he exposes himself watching Nelson, Mas0n, a bunch of these prophets kill. And he says whenever one of them dies, it's always a sacrifice. None of them die of natural causes. They cut off their finger because they're skull and bones. They take the finger and he also said that that's what's in the box on the temple altars. It's not prayer names, that it's bones. So anyway, point is, President Ballard is dead. M. Russell Ballard. That's why I was getting mixed up, because he has Russell, the same name as Russell Nelson, which is a family last name. So there's probably some relation there as well. And he's also, like I said, he's the great grandson of Joseph Smith. So they all say they will actually talk about how they believe that they are direct descendants of Jesus Christ. They're not. They're direct descendants of Joseph Smith. Yeah. And most of them, you can't do anything if you're not one of these Joseph Smith bloodlines. So,
which I think is why they were so involved in the tests and genealogy, even though they say it's for their posterity and to do all that. I just think there's way more to that than they let on. Way more.
Do you know anything about the book Visions of Glory? And have we talked about that at all?
No.
So there was an author, I think I talked about. Actually, the reason that I want to touch on this is because my interview that is going to be coming out today at 5:00, which by the time this releases, it'll already be out. But so I talk about in that interview a man that wrote a book under a pseudonym Spencer, but his name is Tom Harrison. And he wrote this book called Visions of Glory, and it was a really popular book in the Mormon church. Gosh, when I was still married, maybe 10 years ago. And it was when everybody was like doing prepping and talking end time stuff, and Julie Rowe and is his name Chad, the one who killed his
Daybell.
wife. They killed his wife. Daybell, yeah. Like these people were all kind of in these groups, and so the Daybell case, they were really big on this book, Visions of Glory. Like, in fact, when she was arrested, when they came to her in, I think it was Hawaii, and found her sitting there in a bathing suit, like to say, you better produce your children.
Mm-hmm.
They were already dead. She was holding that book, reading it, Visions of Glory. It was she used it like a Bible, she lived by it. And I actually read that book several times, and I realized, like, I think that book messed me up. And in a way for a while, but the thing is I was doing all my prepping stuff because the church had commanded us to. It was part of, it was literally like they said, oh, it's a commandment. You need to have a year's worth of food storage. Anyway, that book is interesting because that guy, he was my therapist, and I talk about this in the other interview, and I've questioned, is he good? Is he bad? I don't know. Well, the woman in that interview that I expose, who there's a video in it, and she knows a lot of these people because she helped a lot of SRA victims. She actually texted me a message after she saw my interview, before she threatened to sue me.
Oh, geez.
She was watching my interview, messaging me, and I hadn't talked to her for years because we kind of had a falling out. But then she happened on my interview within the first hour it was released. And she knows a lot of Mormon SRA victims because she was a reprogrammer therapist. And so I got a message from her. And here it is. She says, hold on. I just heard your interview, last communication I had with you. You were accusing me of being a Satanist. I'm not even going to respond to that. Oh, that was because actually I didn't accuse her of being a Satanist. I just thought her family was in on it because she said some things to me that made it really clear. And that, if you go watch this other video, that'll make sense. But this is the point. She said, I want you to know that Tom Harrison was the therapist who helped push memories down for the Covens in the 90s. Every client I have had named him. He is not safe. Just want you to be aware.
Wow.
Isn't that interesting? So
That's
if you hear about him, because a lot of the Mormon podcasters have been talking about him lately because he's connected to Tim Ballard.
And this is who? This was the
Tom
therapist?
Harrison, the one who wrote this book. Yeah, he had 3 near-death experiences. He was my therapist for a while when I was married. I actually used him as a therapist, and he has spiritual gifts. But what I'm realizing is I believe he's a warlock, and he kind of works off on his own. But he's written this book about the end times and visions of glory, and how in the last days, it really prophesies the Mormon church being like the church
corrupt
in the end times.
Mm-hmm.
Like the true church.
The true church.
Yeah.
Wow.
Like he has this vision that Joseph Smith comes back with Jesus Christ in the.
He can't get out of hell. Just ask your dude.
Right.
Yeah.
In the Mormon, in the tabernacle, he has this whole vision. Supposedly, it's just witchcraft. He's a warlock.
It sounds wild.
And anyway, just to say, I have validation
proof.
Here
yeah.
that. Yeah. And here is where, she starts threatening me to sue me.
Oh my gosh.
So anyway, we can move on from that. But let's just watch this video real quick because we talked about this. America, what does it mean? Somebody sent me this. So I was like, oh yeah, we should just watch that real quick. When we were talking about the flag.
Yeah.
To the Italian explorer Amerigo Vespucci, as we've been taught. But instead, after the Peruvian god Amaru. According to Manly P. Hall, author, Rosicrucian, and honorary 33rd degree Freemason, quote, the name America is derived from the god Quetzalcoatl in Mexico, and in Peru he was called Amaru. From the latter name comes our word America. Amaruca is literally translated land of the plumed serpent. the priests of this God of peace once ruled both Americas.
There you go. The land of the plumed serpent. That's what the word America means.
He looks like a serpent, bro. He looks scary. I know. Whereas, like, usually they look a little sweeter, don't you think? Like,
You
he's
got your
spooky.
Gargamel. That's Gargamel.
He is Gargamel. He's spooky.
Yep. This goes into how he acknowledges Alan Key in Skull and Bones in his very own book, how you talked about it's called Heart to Heart, I think. And he says right here that life was wonderful and successful, as it always is for the Brothermen. On April 3rd, 1944, I was elected president of the Sigma Chi fraternity. Okay, I was best friends with the Sigma Chi fraternity when I was in college, and these boys are all Freemasons, and they all of my family's friends from my ward growing up were connected, and I used to party with those guys, and they are some wild dudes. And these fraternities are actually part of when boys are initiated, and from these bloodlines, they are always put into these fraternities. So not only was he Sigma Chi, he was elected to honorary societies of Skull and Bones in his junior year, Owl and Key in the senior year, and the Beehive Honorary Society in senior year. Yep. And at graduation time to be the honorary Scholastic Society of Phi Kappa Phi and Phi Beta Kappa, which I think those are female. I think those are sororities.
I know Phi Beta Kappa is. Phi Beta Kappa is.
Yeah. So they're like, oh, we love you. You're amazing. We're going to give you an honorary whatever.
Right.
And so then he says I was awarded his bachelor's degree in June, and then he just talks about his marriage and stuff. So, and then there he is. Right there.
Boy, he didn't age well. His nose got crazy.
Well, even his eyes still looked real devious back then. I mean, doesn't he look devious?
Too much gold juice. Too much gold juice.
Gold juice, right? I mean, Skull and Bones. I mean, they're into magic, bone magic. It's and murder. It's dark. It's not like, oh, it's just a club. No, that's not what it is.
Nope.
It's a very dark secret society. So anyway, let's see. Yeah, we went through that. And then, okay, so let's move over to, how do I get off of, screen share right here. Stop screen share. Okay, so let's go through all of these pictures that you sent me that are amazing.
Yeah.
How do I find them? Where are they? There we go. Oh, wait. I got a screen share first. Screen share. Sorry,
they're worth it. The pictures are worth it, guys. It's hard. It's weird to go back and forth. Yeah.
It is. It's like, and the screen's weird. Okay. So is it showing on your end yet?
Yep. It's there.
All right. So why don't we talk about this?
Well, okay. So this is a picture of the FLDS people. And like I've told you guys before, they look very much like they just left a little house on the prairie, which isn't the problem. I mean, I'm just telling you so that you'll know that this is the type of dress and hair that they have, because I haven't shown a picture yet. So as you can see, there's actually multiple birth defects in this family. The family lines are often interbred because they're all related to each other and they don't marry outsiders typically. And they have multiple problems with the 6 digit, but they also have problems. There's like a bunch that they actually have that are really bad. One of them is they can't break down this one enzyme. Let me tell you what it's called. It is.
Well, and while you look for that, I just want to say this, the reason this was so fascinating to me is because I have had my own suspicions going, okay, who is Warren Jeffs? And if they broke off from the Mormons, and then you've got the Kingston clan and, all these little groups that left mainstream Mormonism. And if I'm suspecting, that Joseph Smith and all of his posterity and the current day prophets are some form of serpent seed, Nephilim hybrid, children of the Nephilim, that you've got this 6-finger marker of that. We've talked about that within the Nephilim hybrid genetics. And so I just thought it was fascinating because you said you were looking something up and you found that
And it came up.
they
Yeah.
have in the FLDS, it's one of their huge main markers is the sixth finger. And so then I'm like, okay, this isn't just like, I want to find somebody, I want to find a survivor, somebody who knows more, because they've got to be spinning magic too. They know who they are, and they've got to be doing satanic ritual stuff too, at the higher echelons. I mean, amongst the men. And I think that's why they kick a lot of the boys out, because I think a lot of those boys are sodomites and they just don't have, use for them, because they're trying to just procreate and reproduce, because that's what the serpent wants, is to get as many temples here as he can for his dead Nephilim spirits to inhabit, because
they can't break down
bloodlines.
They can't break down
those counterfeit spirits. They become a Nephilim host.
Yeah, the fumarase in their body, the fumarase in your body, and it causes huge, severe physical and mental retardation. It causes you can actually see it on some of the people. And like a lot of people were commenting on Sister Wives, Cody's friend. He has it. He's from the Kingston clan. You can super tell because they all kind of have this different look for if they have this a little bit. But also when they took down Hilldale and Colorado City, and they took him away from the FLDS because he went to prison, they still have a little sect that they keep, but there are tons of baby graveyards because these babies, they have like a huge rate of infant mortality. So it's really scary kind of. And we, like I said, we would get the worst of the worst. Like if they were going to make it and they were like, well, maybe they might make it to the hospital, we would get them when they were like an absolute train wreck. And it would just be, whoa. And you can see their skin. Like that girl is unnaturally fair. I mean, I'm very fair. That's even more fair than I am. I'm not saying that's always bad. Redheads have it, whatever. But I'm just telling you, like that clan has almost all of them have it. It's very strange. Mm-hmm. So these aren't
just markers of incest. Yeah. These are specific markers of, breeding with the giant,
interbreeding
the fallen,
mm-hmm. Yep.
With angels, because the sixth finger comes from the angel. And so to end up with a sixth finger in their genetics, when they left, however long ago, that they separated from the main Mormon church and have been out there, they may be doing this angelic breeding, these, dark rituals, sacrifices to Moloch, a lot of these dead babies, like I talked about last time. I think what happens there is you've got so many of them they sacrifice in order to get power. And then what happens is after you sacrifice so many babies and then you've inbred, the natural curse that comes upon that lineage is that they can't bear children, and that a lot of the boys are dying. And so I think that's what a lot of these deaths have to do with is a curse upon their heads. And then, you also mentioned that you got some insider information about how they do Freemasonry as well in the FLDS.
They still continue the Freemason rituals that I'm not sure as to what, but I know they do the Freemason rituals very similar to what I think mainstream still does, but I'm not sure about the changes and the aspects of it. So, but he did mention.
Knows anybody that knows about that in the FLDS, I'd love to hear from them, have them reach out to me, because I want to get more information there, because I know there's a lot of secrets still buried there that I'd like to connect. So fascinating stuff. You've got Nephilim genetics going on in the FLDS as well.
Yes.
That's just okay. So that's just another thing talking about Noah being white as snow and his white wool hair and his eyes being beautiful when he opened them, like, that it was like he illuminated the whole house like the sun. That's pretty fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just got, there's our little incestuous couple, the child pedophiles. Here we talked about this last time and I found it, so I thought I'd just show you. You've got President Mas0n and President Bush, president of the Mormon Church and president of America, doing the sure sign of the nail. We showed you guys that last time. Yep. Looks, like that.
We talked about it.
See how,
yep.
You don't shake hands like that if you're mean to.
Down his cuff. Yeah.
That, yes, you slip that up the cuff on purpose. That's not an accident, when you slip that finger in there, and you can see even right here,
they're
you can
both
see
doing it.
President Mas0n's finger poking over there. And you know what really grosses me out is the glare and the look that they're giving each other in their eye.
Yeah, kind of strange.
That
Surprised
to
they
me
both-
says, hello, fellow sodomite. What kind of power do you have?
They didn't have
It's
the power
gross.
to shave their ears because that close up of Bush was not good.
My dad used to make me
Sorry.
pluck all that hair out of his ear when I was growing up. I would
I
have had
just
him
noticed
cleaned up.
that.
Gross.
Yeah, for sure. Oh my gosh.
All right. And we talked about this
Yes. The
under the
star.
Statue of Liberty. You talked about the star that we were thinking it was a pentagram, but
11.
it's a what is
It's an 11 pointed star. And so the thing about the 11 pointed star is it's also represents like the Klepoth and the tree of knowledge and the Sephiros and the tree of life and the Kabbalah. They're 10. And then they're opposite the 10, Sephiroth with the Klippa, where there's 11 that comes into the, I can't even pronounce these words very good, Thaumiel, which is the twin gods. So representation, like the twin towers. 11 is a really important number, but it's actually considered negative. It has like negative meaning. In the Holy Scriptures, it's only used to symbolize disorder, judgment, and imperfection, and the sinful nature of mankind, how man rebelled against God, which I thought was super interesting since this is an 11-sided star. So that's what represents, and it, like everything that I looked up, it just keeps saying that it's disorder, sin, all of that. 11 heads of error, even on the occult stuff. Zodiac, same. Like it's just really interesting that they would actually choose that. They also use everything as above, so below. So one is good, one is bad. Everything's duality. Like if you get into Crowley's work, but 11 is an important occult number. Very
right.
so.
Okay. And this isn't a very good quality picture. I didn't realize until I just tried to zoom in. But down here, somewhere down here, there's a sign that has the compass and the square. So it's Freemasonry. It was very clearly brought or built by the Freemasons and dedicated. And down here, you can't see, but you can go look it up online. Right here where her foot's showing, there's a chain. There's actually a chain hanging out. So that's about like, it's the illusion of freedom. Which actually you have a ball, there's a ball and chain under there. You're chained.
Mm-hmm.
All right. And then this was just a really interesting thing I came across this week. So you've got the giants and the Nephilim in the book of Jubilees. This is where it comes from. And they explain these different, directly out from a human and an angel breeding. You've got 13 to 36 feet tall. That's the Nephilim. And then the Nephil, children of the giants, 7 to 13 feet tall, and then the Eliud or the Elho, grandchildren of the giants, 6 feet to 7 feet tall. And I think this is what we see a lot of today, walking around on our basketball teams. And I have friends who are like that, and so you're a few generations out from your original conception, but I think just talking about it as a Nephilim hybrid, it's because these are different words that specified tribes during that time, But it says, for owing to these three things came the flood upon earth, namely, owing to the fornication wherein the watchers against the law of their ordinances went a whoring after the daughters of men and took themselves wives of all, which they chose. And they made the beginning of uncleanness, and they begat the sons of the Nephilim. I don't know, that's spelled different too. And they were all unlike, and they devoured one another. And the giants slew the Nephil, and the Nephil slew the Elho, and the Elho, and the Elho mankind, and one man another, and every one sold himself to work iniquity and to shed much blood. And the earth was filled with iniquity. And after this, they sinned against the beast and the birds and all that moves and walks on the earth. And much blood was shed on the earth. And every imagination and desire of men imagined vanity and evil continually. So this tells you what all these people were like and why their God was telling people to slay every man, woman, and child, why he sent the flood, because men were sinning by laying with the angels, and the angels had sinned and come down, and then they just created this breed of children that took over the world, and it was just continual nonsense. So anyway, I want to, so you just interviewed a friend of yours named Brennan, and I want to talk to him some more about this, because he has a lot of information about these breakouts and the children of the children of the children. And he was saying how, he doesn't believe that us calling each other Nephilim is appropriate, which I thought was funny, because I'm like, we kind of do that around here, but it's hybrid. It's not saying you are this giant, per se, but the hybrid from them, because there's so many terms, and there's so many tribes in the Bible that were giants, like the Philistines were giant tribes, the Canaanites were most of these ites tribes were some version of one of these. And it doesn't always tell you how.
I think he was just saying, like, we never want to put a curse upon anybody. So, like, you never want to take a curse. Like, that was how he kind of explained it to me. And he was like, well, even if that does happen, we don't know, and we don't have any proof, but yeah, I would cover the sin just in case, like, pray about it and all the things that way. But I mean, and I get that. I definitely get where he's coming from too, because we really don't know, but we're, and that's the big thing with me and her, is we're just trying to figure this out. Like everybody else, like, well, not everybody, not very many people do this. So all I know is me and her have had a lot of conversations about a lot of things where we're like, oh, wow, that was weird, or this is weird, or your family said what, and just all this stuff. So we're doing our best too, people. So
are you talking about me and you, or me, or you
me
and
you
else?
Me and you.
Oh, okay.
Yep. We've had a lot of talks about all this family stuff and my weird stuff and your weird stuff, and we're just trying to figure this out.
Yeah, because we know we come from this on some level, and so we're all just learning how it fits, and that there's what it says in the Bible, and then there's the reality of how it's showing up in our lives today. And God's been teaching. I still have dreams on the regular about this kind of stuff, and he shows me new stuff all the time. And one of the things he was showing me recently, while he was having me do some warfare, and some intercession for and in behalf of some family friends who have this six finger and the bloodline and have a lot of black magic stuff going on in their family. The way he showed it to me was like a parasite. And so the way that Brennan had explained it was that it's a counterfeit spirit. So it's not, it's basically an illegal spirit. But I think once you get out a certain level from them, there is a redemption that's possible, right? And it may not be a full counterfeit spirit, because what I've heard other people talk about who are in deliverance, who have actually worked with people who come from these bloodlines, and will tell you, I gave birth to a Nephilim child. I was forced in a ritual to have sex with a fallen angel, and I gave birth to this child. And what they do a lot, because it's interesting, he was talking about this as well, they grow so fast that they take them into hiding and they raise them, and then they send them back to marry their own mother. And so you guys were talking about the breeding amongst how you can get, like, what was it? Like a SS?
The giants. Yeah. He was talking about like how you get like a
what's
purebred.
that called? The gene.
The dominant and recessive and the Punnett squares.
Something in a box.
Talking.
Squares,
That's a Punnett square. And so we were talking about how like a giant would have to have like like a big S and a little s, because they had a mother that's the little and the giant, and then you'd have to have a big S, little s. And so eventually when you transfer them across, you probably get 1 in 4. I could do it.
Because they do send them back to, I'm sure why they're sending them back to breed with their own mothers. And then in my visions, like I've had where they're breeding with little people to downsize. And so we don't know how many people out in front of us may be, closer to this, because they're not a giant. They're not 13 to 36 feet tall anymore. If they're going back and they're breeding them and downsizing and using little people, if they took a little person and bred a little person with an angel, so you have a full-blown Nephilim, in that first generation, and then they're smaller, and then you breed them with a smaller person, this is that science in that vision that God was showing me that I couldn't even retain. It was so big, and it was in such a short, quick, download, but it's going on. I know it's still going on today, and we have these remnants in our bloodlines. And so how he was showing it to me is as a parasite. And so if somebody has a parasite spirit, I believe what that would be is probably more like, because they have a legal, because the enemy's kingdom, the kingdom of darkness, has a legal right to somebody who has this on their bloodline. If somebody like my friend is born out far enough in these generations and they don't have a counterfeit spirit, what they can do is infect them with a Nephilim host. And that would be the disembodied dead, the evil spirits. And that would be more like what we're calling demonic possession. But they live out their entire life with this Nephilim host inside of their body, working through their bloodline. And so that would be something that would be more of like a exorcism that would need to happen on that to procure the life of that person if they're fully human. And I think God's just going to keep revealing more and more about this, because those of us who are involved in intercession and deliverance are getting downloads about this stuff that's not written, because of our genetics. And there's that book that I talk about that Nathan Reynolds pointed to, that is called the gospel to every man. Oh, now I can't remember the name of the book, but it's essentially one of the scriptures in the Bible that's, preach the gospel to every creature, something like that, talking about how, because the question is, Nathan Reynolds thought his whole life he wasn't redeemable, because when they tell you, oh, you're a hybrid, you're a serpent seed, you work for the devil, this is who you are, you just think, oh, okay, I'm unredeemable. Like we talked about how they think they're apocalypse architects and things like that. But then Jesus came and redeemed him and saved him. So then it's like, well, is it a full counterfeit spirit? We don't know. So that's where like revelation and prayer and is just really going to have to come in these end times, because we're fighting a crazy battle against. And like I talked about with my daughter's vision, you've got the wicked destroying the wicked. And then there's some who are in between who may not be counterfeit, who are born into a bloodline to be redeemed and to expose the enemy. And so it's just fascinating stuff. Anyway, do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm glad that you were talking, because I'm still getting over my cold. So.
Okay. All right.
Sorry about that.
That's okay.
I muted. Hopefully it was muted. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, it was.
Okay.
This is just a fascinating picture that I found that shows back in the early, these are all the different prophets from all of these generations, and them in all of their little white suits who are all like
their temple clothes, bloody
murder, incestuous. It's
just Brigham Young's suit should have been red with red shoes. He was right. They literally nicknamed him Bloody Brigham. So, I mean, it was something else.
Wow.
He was bad.
Yeah, it's funny too, because when I get dreams, when I have dreams and when I'm doing my interpretation, when somebody presents like in a white shirt or something, what that means to me is a false light, like that somebody's trying to pose and present themselves as being, something good when they're not. And so I usually, as soon as I see somebody in white and when I'm in dreams, I'm like, evil. They're evil.
You're like, no, don't come at me.
Yeah.
Oh man.
Yeah, these just made me laugh. Okay, so why don't you talk to us about these parchments? You sent me all this stuff. Anything about these?
Yes, these are owned by a private collector, and they were originally owned by the LDS Church, so the reorganized LDS Church, which was the branch that Mas0n started without the polygamy, I believe. I think that's right. But they had these in their property, and they said by the sigils that are on them that even though, like they say, they were found through Hiram's family, most likely they were owned by Joseph Sr. and Joseph Smith. And I've looked at these with some OTO members, and as much as I know about Enochian magic and different things, because I've studied like crazy to try and figure all this out, not because I want to be a magician or anything weird, but you see this and you're like, okay, I want an answer. And so then you start going through stuff, and I'm like, no, there's nothing in the Bible. There's nothing anywhere. Where do I find this? So I put a Google search of the photos, not this one, but the Holiness to the Lord parchment. And the thing that kept coming up was Enochian Enochian alphabet. I'm like, what's the Enochian alphabet? Oh, okay. Well, I have to go down that one back. This is the holiness to the Lord parchment. And so I'm like, what is this? And when I was on Josh Mondays, I didn't know yet. I kind of knew a little tiny bit. And then they were like, I knew the middle was a Maltese cross, and that's very Rosicrucian. And I knew a couple other things, but I definitely hadn't gone deep enough or asked enough people. And so the more I found out, these are sigil magic. Like, this is calling down for specific angels. And there's one, I don't know if you put that one in here with the red, and it has all the explanations, and it has different, and I don't know it, because if you kept them black and white, it might not be there, but that's okay. Another time I've posted it, and they can look it up if they want to, but it has like a breakdown at the bottom of what the heck all that is. I mean, because there's multiple parchments. And so they try really hard to blow this off, right? Because how evil does that first one look that you showed, that black and white? Oh, there it is. See all these little sigil markings, and at the bottom, there's a cipher, right? So originally when Joseph Smith was disclosing things, he was saying, when he was doing all his translations, see this Raphael star, this is calling down the angel Raphael. And this is all from the Magus, which the Magus is an occultic book full of spells. So like, and witchcraft books and all these things. So look at these books at the bottom, and none of them are, I mean, you're not going to learn this stuff if you just stay in the Bible. It's not going to happen. So I had to go outside of the Bible, which made me super duper uncomfortable because I'm not a seer, I'm a feeler. And so, boy, did I get nailed. I started having weird feelings, like all kinds of stuff. I was not happy about it. And I have to always protect myself and put on a lot of armor of God, because I know that I'm protected at this point. I know that this has to happen from someone. If I don't tell you this, you're like, who's going to go study the occult and put theirself in that uncomfortable shoes to come and tell you this? Like, I didn't want to do it either, but here I am. So,
and if you're doing magic with angels, you're not doing magic with good angels.
No, and and they're gonna lie. You know that this is the thing about John Dee. He
drew all this. This is drawn by Joseph
sigil. Yes, and this is all highlighted in red and stuff so that you can see the separation of each symbol. But it looked like the black and white version, and they're really in poor shape. They took, these are the only photos of them. And you can go online and look up Holiness to the Lord parchment, and it will come up. It is not me making this up. Like, this is real. And I think I'm one of the few ex-Mormons that cover this, because it's so occult in nature that most people look at it and go, yeah, nope, I'm not going to deal with that. Even if they show you the picture, they're not going to get into this. And even if they talk about it,
they just want
it's
you
folk
to look
magic.
At the
yeah. They'll just say, oh, it's folk magic. That's what it is. And then everybody accepts that. But these books at the bottom are how they got the ciphers of what the hell is on here. And so
this is how he got Moroni to appear
Adonai.
To him.
Yes. And I will explain, like, I'm going to be doing a huge thing on John Dee here in a couple weeks, but John Dee is the critical part of this. And he was born in 1527. He was an astrologer. He was a mathematician. He was the queen's, like, if they needed an astrology date, like what day her coronation should be, all these weird things. So kind of like a magician. And he was really actually a Christian, but he wanted to know these secrets so badly that he was getting other people to scribe for him, because he himself was so smart and brilliant that he never could let down the part where you have to let it down to receive, like, seeing things. So he had to go get scries, and his scry, Edward Kelly, actually tried to quit like 2 or 3 times, because one time a sword came out of the book and like stabbed him because he wanted to leave. And like, they saw this, it was like, these angels were not nice. They were horrible. Yeah. And so the same thing with Joseph Smith. He says later, like, the salamander letters are this big joke, but actually there's a true story that Joseph Smith said that has an affidavit for court from one of his neighbors, that he told a story of a toad, which is actually more occult in nature. It's dark magic. A salamander would be considered white magic, but a toad is not. It's considered black, like dark magic. And that it punched him when he tried to get the plates and knocked him out 3 or 4 times. So Like, this is not my story. Like, this is his story.
Well, and then the question I was asking about that is my question is, was some of these things that he's written, was he even in the physical realm?
No,
because when you're a warlock,
I think he was downloading.
You travel in the spirit.
Well,
and,
I think
you can travel in the spirit to other dimensions. And if he went and got some plates, and when he was under that sheet, he could have been interdimensional. That may be why the whole plate thing was so
I think
like he couldn't say, well, I can't actually hold them because they're not physical, they're in a spiritual dimension. I don't know, I'm just conjecturing.
John D and his scry used a black magical mirror, which was made out of obsidian, so a crystal stone as well, and they had downloads from the angel directly to the scryer, and he would write these Enochian symbols, which, funny enough, look like what? Egyptian is what we were told as kids, right? That this was written in Egyptian. Reformed Egyptian is what he called it, but it wasn't. I think he was getting the Enochian alphabet and these symbols. So people like think Joseph was writing like, and then it came to pass. No, that wasn't it. He was writing these symbols, and then he was filling in things, which is why it has some wordage of the Bible. But I think the actual body of the work was done by channeling these spirits, because he used a seer stone, which was made of certain things as well. So it's really closely related. It's very closely related. And it's not just him. Aleister Crowley did this. Aleister Crowley had a download for the Book of the Law with an alien named Awaz in Egypt, and other people. Muhammad did from Gabriel the angel. And if you
go into the New Age community, there are plenty of people right now currently who are writing books of supposedly ancient histories. They're writing right now that are channeled books, and they're getting this information from fallen angels. And so it's incredibly common even today. Channeling is one of the most common, like, naughty things that humanity does to get this information. And the fallen's always trying to, send their little twists and twerks into our realm. But I just wanted to point this one out because we're going to show that Jupiter's talisman, but this says Jupiter is associated with high positions, getting one's own way, not God's will, and all forms of status. How you talked about his charisma. You could be sitting in the same room with him and be so mad at him, and you just couldn't stay mad at him, as well as the power of I can't tell. It's kind of blurry. Sorry. Stimulating anyone to offer his devotion to the possessor of the talisman. So that is how you get so many followers. That is straight up witchcraft. And Joseph Smith drew this, and he
never took that Jupiter talisman off, and his wife identified it. Upon his death, she identified it and it requested it back. So there's no question. They cannot say that was Hiram's. They cannot say that was someone else's. It is his. It has been identified. So he wore this all the days of his life. So why? If he was why isn't it a cross? Or why isn't it, I don't care. Why isn't it something else? This is a cult in nature, and talismans are. And here's my deal. I don't care. Like, if you want to be an occult magic person, then you go be that. But like, don't call yourself Christian. Please leave Christianity away from it, and I will leave you alone. Mormon Church, like, let the people out of enslavement.
I know. I was just realizing that with when I was reading about how he got his Freemason, he accomplished all the levels. This is my conjecture. This is what, after reading everything that I've read, I think what happened is that I think he's a serpent bloodline, Nephilim, something into magic. And I think that the Freemasonry came secondary. I think he joined that in order to have a cover for all of his occult stuff and to go plug it into that. And he probably learned then you have to have a
they were burning people.
Right?
They were burning witches. So I don't think that they were trying to go put this out. They were probably trying to hide this.
Yeah, they had to hide. They always had to hide it under religion. I believe that's why his family left the UK in the first place, because they were running.
And his mother was
the burning
Scottish.
of the witches.
Yeah, his mother was
so they're
Scottish,
on
and
the
that's
run
even
from
worse.
the burning of the witches, which is going on all
Mhm.
over. So they have to hide it under religion. So he comes out and goes in, gets all of his Freemasonry levels real quick, and it's like, oh my gosh, I can hide all of my stuff inside of Christianity. You have to have a higher power. So I'm going to take Freemasonry and Christianity and mix it and put forward this elite form of Freemasonry and religion, and then that's where we can hide all of our serpentine bloodline, all of our Nephilim,
Well,
c-
and
because
the way he rose to his Freemasonry was very odd. It was very occult in nature because he rose to a master Mason in one day. That does not happen. He got his Masonic rights, and then one day later, he rose to a master Mason. Why? And then all of a sudden, he's got a dead baby, his first son, and his dad's got a dead first son. So then all of a sudden, that's your number one. Do you know, in the occult, the most expensive thing that you can bring is your son. And so if they were doing, a sacrifice, which I'm just guessing, okay, I mean, that would be it. Because his dad, shortly after this all nonsense started going on, the oldest son dies, right? And then his brother died. And so it was, what's his name? Alvin? Yes, I think so.
Mm-hmm.
And so then he had a baby, and it was like almost 9 months to the day that he got the plates. And it was in the middle of the night, all dressed in black. This guy gave an affidavit in court about how they obtained the plates with a black horse and dressed in black on the fall equinox in the middle of the night. And it's not like all white and delightsome like we think. No, it's very occult. And he had Emma with him. And so he supposedly gets the plates that day. Well, they went home and had their wedding that night. They had their wedding, their wedding night. They had already had their wedding. And I think the correlation is he knew he wasn't going to be pure anymore after that point. So 9 months almost to the day, they have a baby, and it's born severely deformed, doesn't live, and they name it the dead brother's name. And at some point, they dig the dead brother up and put it in the newspaper. It's just too good. And then
why did they dig the brother up?
I forgot to tell you this. This is amazing. Okay, this is hilarious. I wished I would have sent you the picture on this, because this is like the funniest crap you've ever heard. So all of a sudden, the angel said to him, no, you can't have the plates. Come back next year and bring your oldest brother. And he's like, okay. And then he goes home and the brother dies. Like, of a sudden. They said it was an illness, but I guess when they did like the autopsy, he had been accidentally poisoned by the doctor from some like bowel obstruction or something. Here's
the humor of the wicked angels messing with humanity.
Yeah,
Still
exactly.
Still
killing people. Yes. And so they're like, they need this brother, but he's dead. And so they go back a year later, and apparently it had got out like before the brother died, like, oh, I need to take him with me, blah, blah, blah. Well, the brother dies. So the dad comes out a year later and puts this in the newspaper. This is undisputable. It's in the newspaper. He takes out an ad and says, hey, I didn't mess with my son's body, and we didn't dig him up. So we would never do that. So yeah, we're not weirdos like that, basically, but we're going to go dig him up and make sure that nobody else dug him up, because we didn't dig him up. So if you saw us dig him up, it wasn't us. And it was so weird. I was like, when I read the article, I thought, oh my gosh, they dug him up,
they got to go make sure nobody else dug.
Yeah. Well, I think what it was,
they took him to get the plate.
Well, no, they lie and say they didn't. And they say, we were just making sure he wasn't disturbed. You can tell if a year-old grave has been dug. Okay. All they had to do was go.
But
they
probably did, is what you're saying.
But they dug him up. They did dig him up to prove to everyone that they didn't dig him up. But they could have snuck a finger or something. That's what I think. But that's just my warped little brain.
They needed his bone. Maybe that's what all the skull and bones know that got him.
Swear.
That's to the angels.
Well, and here's the thing. If you put that in your newspaper, then if somebody did see you, they could be like, well, I'm pre-gaming that, so I'm going to cover my butt and say it was because we were checking on things. And you could disturb the grave later by going back, because now it's already been turned over. The dirt's turned over. So you could go back in the middle of the night and do it again. Easy.
Yeah.
Easy.
Well, and plus with you talking about the death of all these firstborn sons, like
Yes.
look at how much more magic you could do if you had 33 wives to have a baby for you. How many firstborn sons could you have if for polygamy?
True.
Like, look at the benefit of the magic of polygamy. That puts a whole other level of intention and purpose behind polygamy. And
there's
you know,
all
that
those
getting that
baby
firstborn.
graveyards. There's all those baby graveyards
Well,
there
yeah,
that are
yeah.
weird
There's-
and unmarked. They are unmarked.
And-
They're like a damn
so
pet
many-
cemetery. That's weird.
Yeah, and if you look at these, if you go and look at the births of, and a lot of his children with the other wives aren't, because Joseph Smith's polygamy was secret polygamy. And I want to put that out there because I've had questions, and on a couple other shows that I've done, I wasn't sure yet. I was like, well, I don't know, because a lot of people are saying they don't think that Joseph Smith lived polygamy. Well, I found the smoking bullet. So I can go ahead and say Joseph Smith was living polygamy, because there's a guy who got access to all of the journals. He was put onto the church I think it was 95 maybe. He wrote a whole book about it, and
is this the McClellan collection or no? No, different thing?
I can't remember what it's called. I didn't read the
Okay.
book. I just listened to the podcast of the guy who wrote
Okay.
the book, but he does
He's alive. It wasn't
Cliff
that then.
Notes.
Okay.
Yeah, so I have it. And so anybody who's heard this nonsense about how Joseph wasn't a polygamist, it's BS. And and people are going, well, he put out in the newspaper. Yeah, look what his dad just put out in the newspaper. We know they use the
Yeah.
newspaper to cover their secret
So
lifestyle.
hilarious.
So if he put out in the newspaper, nobody can live polygamy, it's illegal. He did it because people were catching on that he was secretly living polygamy.
Well,
And
he was
he-
excommunicating. He excommunicated Oliver Cowdery, which helped him and was his cousin, by the way, if you didn't know that. Like, Oliver Cowdery was his cousin. And then, so he excommunicated him for them getting mad at him over polygamy because they caught him with the girl that he raised in the barn. And the same thing with Martin Harris. They were both excommunicated because they were like, hey, you're messing around with your adopted daughter. That's creepy. And then Emma threw her out because she was super young and they'd raised her since she was born. And
Yeah.
I mean, if that
He
is
threw a lot of people out. He had a few
Yeah.
people living in his house, but this is the other thing that's crazy that he exposes. And I knew this before, but I didn't have the solid information for years. But his wives were also doing polyandry, because most of a good maybe third of his wives, the guy who wrote the book, he counted 33, and then other historians have come since and found anywhere between 32 and 35 in journals, because they didn't have a temple yet that they were doing sealings in, and so it was all secret polygamy, and so it was spiritual husbandry. And it doesn't really matter because he still had kids with a bunch of them. But all of those kids that he had, when he died, they ended up marrying other general authorities, like Brigham Young
and the
took some of
church
his wives,
lies.
Whitney took some of his wives.
The church lies.
And then they
says he
changed the
never
kids'
had any
names.
other kids. Yeah.
Right. And then some of the kids ended up, they didn't even know that was their dad, because it was all this big secret. And because of the polyandry, and he was taking other men's wives, these women that he was married to, it was essentially just a sexual relationship to probably get his firstborn kids from, when the more
Yeah.
you think about it, because they lived in their house with their current husband. And so it was like he would just go around borrowing people's spouses. So there wasn't, it wasn't just polygamy. And that's one thing that people don't talk about, is it is journaled, proofed. This guy got in the original copies, and he was marrying women who were already married.
Definitely.
Which
Most
all
of
it
them-
is adultery.
most of them.
It's just adultery.
Most of them were already married, except the really young ones. And the bad thing is here, this is why missions became a thing, because he'd be like spotting out somebody's wife. And then he's like, you should go be a door knocker in Iowa. So they'd send him away or send him to the natives or whatever, wherever. And he would just do what he wanted. And
Send
there
him on a
were
mission.
women. Well, his I think it was his cousin, the book, My Life, No One Knows My History. And they always lie and say that it's not real. But she talks about this in there. She talks about this openly, that he had other wives. So,
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is I think that the people saying that he wasn't a polygamist is only in the past few years, because this is the first time I've really heard people coming out and saying that he wasn't. And I think that's an attempt at the church really trying to just what they're always doing, changing their story and
cover it in
rewriting
their
history.
butts. They're
constantly
putting
doing
out
that.
their newspaper article.
Yep.
They need to start putting out there. We do not molest children ever. So if somebody says they're molested, we wouldn't molest them. It wasn't us. It was the Catholics.
Yeah, President Nelson's gonna start putting in the news.
Oh,
I
my
have
God.
not molested my children
Oh, my
or my
God.
grandchildren, just so you know.
Yeah, that's the Catholics. You have us confused with the other church. No, I'm just kidding.
Oh, they're the great and abominable, the whore of all the earth. That's not us.
Oh
We're
my
talking about the
gosh.
Catholics in the Book of Mormon.
Now Catholics, don't get mad at us. We're making a joke. But I'm just kidding.
Well, no,
Anyways.
they're the same thing. They're brothers in the hood, all of them.
Yes.
So just last point before I move on from this one, it says this talisman demonstrates Joseph Smith's fascination with magic. The purpose of such talisman was to help the owner have influence over others, become rich and powerful, and find peace. Again, the reason he kept that and why people were so drawn to him. Fascinating stuff.
I agree.
Yeah.
So weird. Like, I mean, those and like I said, the one thing I didn't say, if you go back to the next when you go back to those weird drawings, there's one in a circle. It's like a weird circle. Did
I pass it? You seen it?
Yeah, one back right there. This bottom corner. This was actually how I discovered the whole link between John D. So in that bottom corner down here. Yep. And this is a sigil for a special angel that I could not find. I could not find it. And finally, I found it. And the only other reference, and I am telling you, I am a researcher. I'm dedicated to having my stuff backed up because I really like to make sure I know what I'm talking about. That particular sigil is an angel named Jubiladance. And I've never found it. Even all the OTO people, nobody knows what it is. And so I'm going through and I finally found the name on the sigil and found out through like reverse, like when you take a picture of something and you're looking through things. And when I found it, it was in John Dee's writings for the Enochian alphabet. And once again, Jubiladance. And it's the only 2 times in the whole scouring of the internet for probably 6 months that I can find it.
Mm-hmm.
Period. So you can't tell me
this is him calling down a certain angel.
Yep. And you can't tell me they always want to say he couldn't have got a copy of the Magus. He couldn't be doing magic. He was just a farm boy. He was a dumb little kid, blah, 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 whatever. There are so many people that have witnessed the family doing magic. There's quotes we're going to get to. In fact, you can go to that one right now with the Lucy Mack Smith quote because it backs up the magic. And where she wrote in the cursive. And
I'm going to go to, I'm trying to see what these say though, right here. This says like prophet exurgatus.
It looks like Latin.
It says something about Dominion, Mason.
Yeah.
Haben. Yeah, it's probably
we should look clearly it up without saying it because who knows what the hell we're saying.
Oh,
I don't know, but I know that this is things you do not mess with, really. So this right here is an excerpt. Lucy Mack Smith made a biography, and boy, did this bite the church in the ass. And let me tell you, she provides this little scribble here, and at the bottom, I think if you go down further, I hope it's the translation of it. Yes. Let my reader suppose that because I shall pursue another topic for a season, that we stopped our labor and went at trying to win the faculty of a brack. Remember that part. Drawing magic circles or soothsaying to the neglect of all kind of business. So she's saying just because we were busy doesn't mean we were lazy, because people were calling them lazy. We never during our lives suffered one important interest to swallow up every other obligation. But whilst we worked with our hands, we endeavored to remember the service of and the welfare of our souls. So they never stopped just because they were busy. Drawing magic circles does not mean they stopped giving homage to their freaking demon, the Abrak demon. I mean, I couldn't believe it when I read it. Nobody brings this up. Abrak is a demon, and it's where we get the saying abracadabra. And it's actually ahabra dabra or something, the way you really are supposed to say it. But anyways, it's a spell. This is Abraxas, or this one is a different but he's the chicken snake god. Usually he's shown with a beak, but this one is the one on Wikipedia, and it does explain it better, like what he was over. And yeah, see the chicken snake god up there on the left. Well, probably you're
And
right.
this
I'm
one
not
didn't,
sure.
didn't
Yep, that
come
one
through very
right there.
but
And so Sam Tripoli talks about this all the time, the chicken snake god. This is like well known.
he
This
does. What does
is
he say about it?
they've done a lot of shows on this, and so not on Joseph Smith, but on this god, and he's always like laughing about it and saying, yeah, that's so cool, the chicken snake god, blah blah blah. So when I saw this, I about died because I knew what it was. I was like, oh my gosh, I know what that is. I heard a show about this, and then so I just went wild with it. But it was so surprising to me because it is so occultic in nature. We are not to worship other gods. This is a lower G god. Period. They have specific things.
Fallen angel,
over.
Obviously, it's a
It's
hybrid.
a mix. Yep, it's a hybrid. It's got
something.
snakes and chicken, and I mean, it is just weird. And it's over specific things, like they all are. And so it's let's see what it's over. Let's try and find it really quick. I'll find that picture that you pulled because I know it's on there. All right. He's a great archon.
Yeah, it's weird how I couldn't find a lot of pictures of it, but the snake are on the feet, so it's about you walking a path with the serpent.
Yep. And he is over like specific things, which is so strange to me. And I mean, a house of a brack means a house of the, like, literally they have house of the Lord on the other one, so you can fill that in. People like it's right there. And he's over like very specific. Yep, very well of this devil is specifically. And I do believe in my heart of hearts that is their god. I do believe that particular lowercase g god is what they pray to and different things. And every time I talk about it, I have problems, but anyway,
which means it's probably the god that's over the Mormon church. That
yes, 100%.
When you go and create something, you can't change it. You like nobody else can change it. Like he's the author of the Mormon church, and so whatever he placed over it, whatever he dedicated it to, is why like those curses that you go take in the temple that are real, like that agreement that you make in the temple with Lucifer. It's
terrifying. And you can feel it. Like, I'm sorry, but you really can feel that is not comfortable. That's not a comfortable place to be. You've been there. Also at the bottom, this on the very bottom there, that knife is called a sigil knife, and it's actually an occultic thing because my friend in the OTO told me, New York Patriot. And
you can see the sigils carved on it.
It's got a sigil of Mars, the Mars sigil. So actually what it is it's a blessing that they don't have to do anything out loud. It's already on the knife for when they slit its throat. So, and they were often, and their neighbor literally said, to find treasure one night, we had to go out at midnight and sacrifice a black, I can't remember if it was a sheep or a goat, but either a sheep or a goat, and slice its throat and let it bleed all over the circle and all this crazy wacko. It was like, wow. I mean, it was something else. So,
wow.
Yeah, it was. And that was these are sworn statements because he got in trouble for glass looking. And so he had to go and have a trial. So all these things.
Yeah, that's what's interesting. A lot. That's another thing about the polygamy thing is for some reason they had a bunch of people come in, and I think it was after he died, a bunch of his wives came in and signed affidavits and talked about, yes, they consummated the marriages. Yes, some of them had children with him. And yes, not all of them, but they did talk to some of them. So that was another way they were able to authenticate, because they were hiding it. And so sometimes if they were hiding it, it wasn't even always written in journals, although it is also recorded in journals.
Well, and the funny thing is, what is the Mormon church always pushing? Keep a journal. So there were journals of a lot of things. And I bet they wish they hadn't made that little rule. Like,
yeah,
they were able
to.
And
in the FLDS church, like your brother-in-law knows that, like the FLDS church, when the police come and they start searching your journals, they want to have records.
Oh,
and the family knows
journals,
and you're telling their secrets and they're in your journals. It's definitely the pressure to keep a journal is definitely one of those spy tactics.
One of the biggest things. And they find out so much stuff that way. That was how a big thing happened with the Hoffman case and the salamander story was because the Salamander letter is because he said something about a McClellan collection, and there really was a McClellan collection of journals. And so I found that excessively interesting because he didn't find it and he lied about it, but it really did exist and they found it later. And it was really damning to Joseph about polygamy, back to your point. So it's just one of those things where I'm sure they're like, oh, wow, wished we wouldn't have wrote that. Wish we would have burned that. Speaking of burning, Lucy Mack Smith's book, and I will wrap up here soon because I got to go get my littles. But when she wrote that book and Brigham Young took over and they split the churches, he tried to have them all burned, like all of them. Yeah. I mean, because that doesn't look bad at all. Yeah. Mr. Bloodstone himself. Yeah.
Well, and it was interesting too, even I'll link that interview or that guy who's talking about Joseph Smith's polygamy in the description as well. But the thing that's really interesting is you'll take note, this guy is a Freemason, and it's the only reason he was given access to these books is because they only allow their own to write books about themselves. Yep. And when they would ask him questions, he's very tight-lipped. You can sense the oath of secrecy to cut out the tongue while they're interviewing him, because he speaks very generally, very vague, very, it's really strange because he's not open at all.
In a trance, like they do that weird trance talk, and I hate it so much. When I hear that, I don't know about you, but from my PTSD, I can't.
I know it is. It drives you nuts because you can just tell there's this whole fake thing going on to it.
Yucky.
He read all of these women's journals. He had access to originals of all of this stuff. Somebody came and put it in his hands. He doesn't say who, he doesn't say how. Obviously, they give people assignments to go and write some history for, probably make some money, put it in Deseret Book. And I mean, he doesn't really expose what was in there. He speaks very generally. So you can sense that. It's like, even though he came out and admitted he was a polygamist, there were certain things about it that he just wouldn't say. And I thought that was fascinating. But anyway, so we're gonna take a break right now. We still have a bunch more images to share with you and some other things we'll talk about. So
we're long-winded, but we're worth the wait. We promise.
That's right.
All right.
All right. We'll catch up on the next episode. Thanks, Heidi.
Yep.